Philip Yoon joins us now from San Francisco. He's the executive director of the Ploughshares Fund and a former advisor on North Korea to US President Bill Clinton. Philip, good to see you. Keep in mind the statement from Senator Lindsey Graham that the president considering military options to destroy North Korea. A few hours after that, the Secretary of State, Rex Tillerson, made a rare appearance in front of reporters and said this.
We do not seek a regime change. We do not seek the collapse of the regime. We do not seek an accelerated reunification of the peninsula. We do not seek an excuse to send our military north of the 38th parallel. And we're trying to convey to the North Koreans, we are not your enemy. We're not your threat, but you are presenting an unacceptable threat to us, and we have to respond.
Two very different statements in both tone and substance. Which one will be heard loudest in Pyongyang?
Well, I think it's not clear which one they will hear, and that's part of the confusion here. You've got mixed messages, and in an area that miscalculation could be catastrophic, that's not good. I mean, Lindsey Graham is a smart guy. He knows that the military option would be catastrophic. He said that himself. And so I just don't think that it's a realistic option. I don't think the South Koreans, who are going to be essential to any kind of unilateral attack or preemptive strike, would stand for it. So in certain ways, I think Lindsey Graham is almost drumming Donald Trump's message, which is to try to put pressure on China to do something. And the problem is, I don't think China is really going to do anything because it's just not credible to them. And so I think they're going to prefer to, as the Japanese in the previous report, most are going to try to just focus on what Secretary Tillerson has said, which I think is the right approach.
Well, Tillerson also talked about the possibility of sitting down and having talks with North Korea. That's not a change in U.S. policy. That's always been there, with preconditions being that basically any talks address Pyongyang's nuclear program. So have we reached the point now, though, that denuclearization of North Korea is just simply no longer realistic?
Well, I think what people are not going to say that, admit that that's not realistic. I think from the public, from a talking point standpoint, they're going to say this is something that I think ultimately is the long-term goal. But I think as a pro forma, as de facto whatever, North Korea is a nuclear state. They've got nuclear weapon. They're working on a delivery system that over a period of time will eventually hit the United States if we maintain status quo. So that's why we have to do something about it. And I think at the very least we have to do talks about talks with the hope that we can get a freeze and just keep them from actually having the capability of sending a nuclear device, a nuclear weapon to the United States, the continental United States. That's what our objective is. We have a little time to do that, and that's what we should be focusing on.
Yeah, that time, though, is getting shorter and shorter. So with that in mind, there's a lot of focus, as you mentioned, on China to try and rein in North Korea. The U.S. president lashed out at Beijing over the weekend. The administration is now expected to announce some punitive economic measures to force China to do more. So with that on the one hand, on the other hand, again, we have Tillerson with a very different take. This is what he said.
We've been very clear with the Chinese. We certainly don't blame the Chinese for the situation in North Korea. Only the North Koreans are to blame for this situation. But we do believe China has a special and unique relationship because of this significant economic activity to influence the North Korean regime in ways that no one else can.
He's kind of saying the same thing, but boy, the tone and the delivery is just night and day compared to the president.
No, I think that's absolutely right. And I think what they're trying to do here is, as I've said, the Chinese have been playing good cop in this game, in this high-stakes standoff. The United States has been playing bad cop, and that really works if the two are coordinated. In fact, they are not. So what has to happen is the United States and China have to really talk and get some understanding about what the future of the Korean Peninsula is going to be, what it looks like. And then if they are able to do that, what can happen is if the United States is serious about solving this problem and not just containing it, what's going to happen is the United States is going to have to give much more benefits, more carrots, and then the Chinese will agree, knowing that it's not really regime change that the United States is pushing for. They'll be willing to use more sanctions and more sticks to us get hopefully a solution and a freeze.
Just finally here, some questions have been raised about just how successful North Korea's missile launch was last week. 38 North is reporting maybe it didn't have the range or the payload capability initially thought. This is their conclusion. Well, North Korea's ambitions reach beyond the west coast of the United States, places like Washington, D.C. If they want to accomplish that with this missile, they will have to change the design substantially. This missile's design may not stretch that far without breaking, but North Korea may try anyway. If so, they probably won't succeed this year or next. So what's your take on that?
Well, I'm inclined to agree. I think that the key takeaways over the last 3 tests, 1 in May and 2 in July, is that they're getting better at it. And clearly the capabilities where they're able to shoot it much higher and for a much longer period of time, that at some point it will happen. In certain cases, it doesn't really matter whether it's going to be 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now. The bottom line is the status quo. If we keep on doing what we're doing, which is more sanctions and nothing else, they will eventually get to where they will be able to hit the United States. They will be able to miniaturize and mate a nuclear device onto this missile and eventually hit the United States. So that's something we have to work on. We have time. That's the key thing, and we've got to move forward to keep them from getting that threshold capability. Just as a perspective, under the grandfather, Kim Il-sung, he did only 15 tests. Under Kim Jong-il, the father, he did 16. Under the grandson, who's only been in power now for 5 years, he's done 80 tests. And depending on how rapidly they do this, they could reach progress a lot sooner than any of us think, and we have to be aware of that. So time is not on our side.
Yeah, and it's not on our side here either. We are out of time. I want to know who's helping the North Koreans right now, but maybe that's a discussion for another time. Philip, as always, great to have you with us. Thank you.
Thank you.